Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our webinar today is Mastery in the Midst of Crisis. And joining us today are our Blue Courage Master Trainers, Dave Dubois, Michael Nila, and Jack Hart. We want to thank them for being here with us today and sharing their wisdom with us. And I will turn it over to Jack to get us started.
Well, thank you so much, Becky. Good morning to you on the West Coast. Good afternoon to everyone else joining us from around the country. And welcome to our webinar this week of Mastery in the Midst of Crisis. We have a tremendous panel gathered today. Michael, David, our master trainers, thank you so much for joining us on our panel. You know, as I was reflecting on the title of what mastery means, and what an interesting time to delve into a concept of mastery when so many of us are so challenged with just surviving in the midst of this chaos and this epidemic. But mastery isn't a new concept to us at the Blue Courage team and in the Blue Courage course. In fact, one of our slides in the foundational section of Blue Courage talks about illuminating the path from inspiration to mastery. And it's taught in this way, that people can be inspired by a new book, inspired by hearing a speech, inspired by going to a religious service on a Sunday. But has anyone ever been inspired and yet 2 days later, nothing has changed? So clearly going from inspiration to mastery requires a deliberate practice. And Michael explains that there's only one path, that there's only one pathway to get from inspiration to mastery, and it starts with the heart set. It starts with the condition of the heart, that when the heart is open and ready and courageous and vulnerable, after looking in the mirror and realizing where we must be doing better personally or professionally, then with that level of heart set, it gives the mind permission to be open to establish new learnings and new trainings and creating this new mindset. And after a period of time, once a mindset is formed, that mindset is turned into a skill set, and that skill set is then applied to the tools that we have for life. Well, it's very interesting that we have the skills and the tools down. We often say that the policing profession does not get in trouble because of its lack of knowledge in the skills and the tools of policing, but it's in having the wrong heart set and mindset in application of those skills and tools. And that sounds an awful lot like how a lot of us are dealing in the age of the coronavirus. We have tremendous skills and tools that we've developed to overcome the challenges here in coronavirus. For instance, we've mastered the skills of the 7-minute hand washing and the skills of gauging 6 feet distance from other people. And we have amazing tools. We have masks that people have created on their own in a sense of community. And we have the tremendous tool of Netflix and managing just the right cue of the Joe Exotic and all the other different programs that keep us at home. And yet, in spite of all of those skills and tools, we're still struggling with the heart set and mindset of what this age of uncertainty means in this difficult time. And so, I'm haunted by your slide, Michael, that you've developed by talking about inspiration to mastery as being the pathway. Well, how do we get from chaos of today and probably the last 6 or 8 weeks? How do we get from chaos to inspiration so that then we can continue to be on our journey towards mastery?
Well, what a great question. Thanks for that introduction, and thanks to everybody who's signed in and who will listen to this in the coming days, hopefully. This concept of from inspiration to mastery is really relevant right now because so many people are having a difficult time getting themselves ready for every day to seize the moment. What do we do in this time of uncertainty and fear, quite honestly, and how do we get past that sense of sadness or depression or loss to feel inspired by the moment? We'll talk a little bit more in a little bit when we talk about the definition of mastery. But let's start off with the concept that mastery is really a journey, and that journey should begin long before the crisis hits. You know, this is about readiness. Are we getting ready for the moment that the chaos will come? You know, as Churchill famously said, you know, will we be ready when the universe taps us on the shoulder and thrusts us into some circumstance we could have never imagined we would be in? So the daily quest for mastery is that journey. And we seek mastery because we want to enhance our capacity. I really believe that life is a quest for mastery, whether it's as a parent. How do we master the skills of parenting? How do we master the skills of being a good spouse or significant other, or being in a relationship? How do we master the roles that we have professionally? So it's really a question of how do we enhance our capacity so that we not only survive, but we thrive both in normalcy and in times of chaos. So capacity is a really important word, because people do what they know how to do. And if you don't know how to do it, you don't do it. If you don't know how to be a great parent, you're not going to be a great parent. If you don't know how to be a good police officer, you're not going to be one. So there's two critical components to this capacity. And it's, do you have the will, which is the drive and the grit, but also do you have the skills to be able to do it? We can have the skills and not have the will. For example, I'm a pretty effective communicator, but if I'm in a relationship and I don't want to talk and put those skills to use, well, I don't have the moral will to use it. So capacity is really, really important. And it's really the heart and soul of this pathway. This journey is really the heart set and the mindset to continuous growth, to continuous learning, to embrace this concept of striving, of being in a quest, of literally every day and every moment and every experience being a striving for us to simply be better. This isn't necessarily to be the best in class, but can I be better? Can I improve literally with every day? And mastery, as we were taught by David G., our spiritual guru, is really a product of attention and intention. David G. actually says the two most important components in life are, where are you placing your attention at any given moment? Because as Tony Robbins teaches us, where you place your attention at any moment is where all of your emotional and physical energy is going to go. So where are we placing our attention in these moments when it's so easy to be distracted and drift away from where we should be placing our attention? And how do we create the right intentions to go along with that? So it's really about our focus. This journey to mastery is about what are we focusing on literally all the time. I'm amazed watching this Last Dance with Michael Jordan and the Bulls, but the intense focus that Michael Jordan had. You know, he refused to allow himself to be distracted. Kobe Bryant the same way. The great masters are focused on what's really important. So this is really about, mastery is really about learning. It's about our experience. It's about engaging in the deliberate practice and the critical repetitions that create the muscle memory and the neural pathways. You know, Bruce Lee once famously said, he doesn't fear the man who knows 10,000 kicks. He fears the man who knows one and has practiced it 10,000 times. So that's what leads us to this sense of mastery. And the real danger today is that in times of crisis and uncertainty and fear, that we abandon those good, healthy practices that led us to this state of mastery on this journey. We abandon them right now. I was having a couple conversations recently. I'm talking to a lot of people during this time, and one of my good friends runs a resort in Mexico. He founded it, created it. He's the owner of it. And of course, they're going through immensely difficult times, laying people off, over $1 million of cancellations in reservations. And I've checked in on him several times. And the first time I checked in on him, I said, well, how are you doing? He said, well, not really good. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I'm not sleeping and all this stuff. And I said, well, are you meditating? Because he was doing it before. No. Are you exercising? No. Are you eating well? No. All the things that he was doing before in normal times, he's abandoned them now and has developed unhealthy habits. And so, now is when we really need to embrace those critical habits. Yesterday, I was talking to my financial advisor who does my investments, and he said the same thing. Prior to this time, he was on this path for health and wellness and not drinking during the week and eating healthy, cutting out sugar. But for the first 3 weeks of this virus situation, he abandoned all of that. So this is about staying true to our habits and our principles in times of crisis. And I love the Gandhi quote, which is Jocelyn put up on the screen. A principle is a principle, and in no case can it be watered down because of our incapacity to live it in practice. We have to strive to achieve it, and the striving should be, I love the last phrase, it's supposed to be conscious, it should be deliberate, and it certainly should be hard as well. So staying true to our practices and our principles during this time is what's really going to save us. Too easy to develop unhealthy habits. This is literally a mental battle that we have to engage in every day, where we ask ourselves, today I must. During this time when I've been at home, every single day I have a list of the things that I want to accomplish today. And before I binge watch TV, or before I do the fun things that I'm allowed to do now that I'm home and I have time, I do the things that I must do today so that I'm productive. The challenge, I believe, to this mastery quest is to be ready to rise up to the moment, to not let the moment be bigger than our capacity to thrive in this moment.
Yeah, Michael, you've given us so much wisdom there. I really like that gauntlet, just to really throw down the gauntlet and ask that really gut check question. Is this moment in history bigger than us? Or do we have the capacity to be bigger than this moment in history? And I think if we look in the mirror and ask ourselves that tough question, maybe multiple times a day, perhaps we can find the inner bravery and perhaps the courage to even will that and to see it through and to be, focused and laser focused on that one kick that we can do in a masterful sort of a way. But, David, as I think of Michael and so many other quotes that he said, he's often shared with us, ignorance is bliss and awareness is torture. And I feel like those of us that have taken the Blue Courage course or the leadership development or, inclusive leadership, so many of these offerings of advanced leadership for personal and professional development are probably even more tortured than people who never went through these courses, because we know how we should be acting and we are called to, to look inward even more, no matter how difficult the times are. Could you talk a little bit about sort of the basic change model that Stephen Covey, I know, has talked about, saying, there's only two ways that people change. And what is the practice? What has been your practice? You're a sheriff, you're a practitioner in the profession. How have you been able to pattern interrupt yourself, or even your team, or even your family, or have those pattern interrupts been done to you to remind you of these principles as you go forward?
Yeah, I've gotten both. What a great topic, and thanks for including me in the discussion. Pattern interruption. I've gotten this week grievances, and I've also pattern interrupted myself. Because it all starts with what we're talking about. Law enforcement. Michael said, we know how to be law enforcement officers, and we do. But it's very different today, right? These challenges are different. They're creating fear and uncertainty amongst all of us, leaders in law enforcement, line officers, forcing us to look at new skills. Something as simple as teaching a class. I have very talented facilitators and trainers who, when we say, okay, with social distancing, we're not going to be able to get into a classroom, so let's use this new technology. It's not even new, but it's new to us. Zoom, Microsoft Teams. Good instructors start to fall apart. And it's not because they're not good instructors. It's because this is a new and different challenge. I've had law enforcement officers, highly trained, highly skilled law enforcement officers say to me, we want to talk about and negotiate hazard pay, which is a topic of discussion now across our profession. So you have a discussion with this officer, very talented, very skilled, gone to numerous dangerous situations in his career. And you say, well, what we do is a hazardous job. What makes this different? And his response was so enlightening. He said, yes, we do a dangerous job, but we're going into situations now that we have a high likelihood to take home and impact our families with. So to me, that's a pattern interrupt. If an officer says something like that to me and I don't pay attention to it, this is where we can get into trouble with the change is about to take place, and it can be pleasant or unpleasant. And how I interact at this time, whether it's me, the officer I'm talking with the public, or whatever is going to be remembered, and it's going to be remembered significantly because it's such an emotional time for people. So it's chaotic, like you said. So where do we go? You say, how do you go from chaos to inspiration? I start to think we go back to heart set. Policing is born in the heart. All we have to do is honor and feel and understand and recognize and slow ourselves down with a pattern interrupt to recognize what our heart is telling us. It's time for me to have a very good conversation with this officer who has just indicated to me, basically, I say a courageous way, that he has fear and he has uncertainty on how to deal with something that may seem simplistic sitting behind my desk in my office, but it isn't to him on the street. So Stephen Covey would say, it's all about how we see the world, and how we see the world is going to impact what we do. If I don't slow down now and honor and take time to go into my heart and express that to individuals, treat people like they're people, not objects moving through a system, then I will probably have a change model of pain, like I have had, of a grievance. And a grievance process has several steps, right? So how many times along the process of a grievance process do I have an opportunity to reset my heart, develop mastery in the way I deal with people at a different time, and try to reset that? Because if I do what I've always been doing based on my the way I'm seeing the world, it will create a problem in the results that I'm getting, and that's where the breakdown takes place. So Stephen Covey would say, make a choice, and the choice has to come after reflection through a pattern interrupt on what are my options, and how can I deal with this person as a person with a real issue that we can work together with. So we're going to have change, and we're going to have problems. Do we want to take control of those through conscious choice? Stay proactive, think about things in advance. What's the end result I'm trying to get to? What's the most important thing in the situations that we've been talking about? I think we'd all agree they're people. So if we want to look for good results with people, this pathway to mastery, starting with our heart set, in a profession that's born in the heart, it just makes so much sense.
Wow, what a great way to bring it back to those principles and concepts that are certainly timeless and yet still relevant today. I'm so haunted by that discussion that you had with that officer, because for the first time, we can bring home some physical thing that we've obtained from work and bring that into the sanctity of our homes, and yet bringing emotional garbage and emotional traumas from our jobs we've been bringing home for 300 years, and haven't quite mastered the way to cleanse ourselves from the neck up as much as we need to cleanse ourselves from the neck down, as we are. We don't want the coronavirus in our house, but often the virus of pain and cynicism and apathy and anger and indifference can sometimes seep into our residences. And isn't that just as much of a hazard as the physical hazards that we see in 2020? Such a tough thing to struggle with for being a practitioner and for leading folks to be able to look in the mirror and to see where the threats are in the world as we move forward. But back to you, Michael. So talk a little bit about mastery. I think folks are so much in survival mode that we're waiting to be inspired to get onto this path of mastery. But why is it so important that we have a discussion of mastery now, even in the midst of, for a lot of us, has been some of our darkest hours, probably for the last century?
Yeah, again, I think the quest for mastery, the biggest reason for it is so that we're prepared, so that we are ready for the challenges of life. But I think this concept of mastery is elusive to most of us, because we think of people that we see as geniuses or prodigies or outliers as they've gotten some divine gift. Tiger Woods got some divine intervention that the rest of us didn't get, which Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers kind of blew that up. And he said, no, everybody has talent. Everybody has capacity. The question is, do we seize the opportunities that life gives us? And are we willing to pay the price and do the hard work that leads to this concept of mastery? So I think we need to understand that that mastery is really a journey, but it's something that likely we will never, ever achieve. It's more of a commitment to a process of continuous growth and development. It's a pursuit, it's a quest, you know, as Don Quixote made famous. It's not something that we should view as other people are capable of and we are not. We need to understand that we are all capable of mastering things in our life. And I love this Robin Sharma quote. He said, over the centuries, people have placed a wall around mastery. They have called it genius and have thought of it as inaccessible. But that wall is imaginary. This is the real secret. The brain that we possess was designed to lead us to mastery. So the brain can be very lazy, or it can be hungry for growth and development, hungry to create neural pathways. That's when our brain is challenged and is the most healthy, when we are struggling to do something that we've never done before. And so that's this journey of mastery. And it's about the understanding that what we do today is going to impact on our tomorrows. I think it's interesting that in this this virus situation, the experts are continuously saying what you do today is going to impact how long this thing lasts. So our behavior matters always, whether it's leadership, whether it's mastery. Our behavior is always going to matter. And when I think of mastery, I think of it as a source of energy. It's really an energy that people who are great at something bring that people who are merely average don't. It's an energy that creates laser focus. It creates an intense drive. It creates what Angela Duckworth, the psychologist, called grit. The grit to stay in the game. It creates precision, and it also creates ease and grace. When you watch people who are masterful at something, or certainly more masterful than you, there's an ease and a grace. They don't struggle. They don't expend energy to do something that we, as we're maybe at very low levels of competency and capacity, we struggle to do them. It's about muscle memory, creating the neural pathways that Daniel Goleman, the father of emotional intelligence, teaches us, that we have these neural pathways, these neural highways. And when you're masterful, the more masterful you are, the less traffic, the less clutter, the less traffic control devices there are in that highway. But if you're not masterful, if you're struggling and you're in that learning mode, your neural highway is cluttered with debris and things that slow you down and obstruct your learning. So we're trying to create and cement in these neural pathways. My mother played the piano for over 80 years, and my mother could sit and play any song from memory with no music. My sister and I one day got tired throwing songs at her, and she sat and played every single one of them. But at the same time, she didn't know where she was. She didn't recognize she was in her home because she had dementia and early onset Alzheimer's. But while she didn't often know where she was, that these things were hers, that was her piano, she could play every song that you could throw at her because the neural pathways were cemented in. That's the product of mastery. So mastery, we have to understand, is less about our genetics and more about our habits, our core beliefs, as David was talking about, our core routines, our rituals. What are the rituals you engage in every single day? Who do you associate with? Dr. Covey used to say, show me who you hang around with and show me how you spend your time and your days, and I'll tell you who you are and what you'll become. So what do we learn and practice in the course of every single day? And we know that consistency is the mother of mastery. The more you do it, the easier it comes. The cemented neural pathways will carry you through the moment. And then it requires less energy and effort to excel at what you're at. And as David talked about, mastery is always driven by heart. It's not driven by the head. The head will talk you out of it. I'm tired. I don't feel like it. It's too hard. But the heart filled with passion is born in the heart. That will drive you through so that you can engage in the battle to create the heart set and the mindset. And so I have my own simple definition of mastery that we use in Blue Courage. And to me, mastery is a process that empowers us to accelerate the speed with which we recognize what is unfolding in front of us, and that enables the ability to act appropriately to achieve an optimal outcome. For example, a rookie police officer struggles to understand what's happening in front of them, where a veteran officer, sees it, recognizes it very quickly. A young officer may draw their weapon in a moment where an experienced, more masterful officer will keep their weapon holstered. If you use the analogy of baseball, what allows a 300 hitter to go into the Hall of Fame because they're hitting 300 versus a 250 batting average hitter who is merely average and doesn't go in the Hall of Fame? The only difference is the speed with which they recognize the pitch that is coming at them. And that speed eliminates the time, the moments where they have to guess. And the less they guess, the more they're rewarded by optimal outcomes. That's the power of mastery. Whether you're playing chess and you can understand what's unfolding on the chessboard faster than your opponent, whether you're in an emotional conversation with a loved one and you can recognize by peeling the layers what is really at the heart of this moment in the conversation, whether you realize whether you have to take a life or that there's an alternative to this and that we can de-escalate it. These are all products of our level of mastery.
Wow, and mastery over self and how important that still is. I still feel
Absolutely.
6 or 8 weeks still into this, we're still having such a pivot towards technology. Whether it's the Netflix or the Amazon or the Disney Plus or the Zoom or the Microsoft Teams, and so much that it's so much technology focused. And very interestingly enough, Harvard Business Review just came out with an article yesterday talking about Zoom fatigue. Which is so interesting that we've really been 6 weeks into this era and we're already writing articles about how the technology is not serving us, and this need for personal connection and personal, personal wealth and personal thriving, is so important. In fact, we were just on a webinar from the World of Business Ideas, who hosted a webinar with Tom Peters, this leadership guru who's written books over the last probably 50 years. And, and he did say that quote, talking about this time is the moment that you will be remembered. The way you behave now, it will be what your people, your team will remember. And he offered a few principles of ways that leaders could communicate this human factor to each other. And he said, first, you're not working from home. You're at home during this crisis trying to work. Your personal, physical, mental, and emotional health is extremely important right now, so take care of yourself. Number 3, you should not try to compensate for lost productivity by working longer hours. Number 4, be kind to yourself. Don't judge how you are coping based on how others seem to be coping. Number 5, be kind to others. Don't judge others based about how they are coping as compared to yourself. And number 6, success will not be measured the same way it was when things were normal. So interesting that, even as we're talking about this path to mastery, we're still focusing on human behaviors and human connection. And really what he's talking about is how we're going to be remembered. Well, that fits right into our legacy. So how do we finish strong, Michael? How do we make 2020 the greatest year of our lives in spite of, or maybe even because of everything that we've seen?
Well, I love that, Jack. I'm in the literally the final third of my life. Maybe the final season of my life, and which is a kind of a harsh thing to realize, but that's the brutal truth of my reality. And so my quest right now at this place in my life is to finish strong. I think about Dr. Fauci. He's 79 years old, and how he's shown up during this. And somebody asked him yesterday on the news, "How are you? How are you doing?" And he said, "I'm great. This is my finest hour. Everything I've done in my life prepared me for this right now. And I think I'm at my absolute best right now." Captain Sullenberger, Miracle on the Hudson, he said, "Man, I did 40 years of flying and thousands of routine takeoffs and landings and hundreds of hours in a simulator, all of it for 204 seconds. So that's the readiness, that's the mastery. And for me, my mantra now is I want to finish strong. I don't want to quit and go quietly into the sunset. I want to finish strong and realize that every single day is an opportunity for me to be better. It's a pursuit and it's a quest. In this moment, I love what Tom Peters said. We will all be remembered for how we showed up, how we led, how we cared for others, the moments of kindness, the moment where we extended ourselves. This moment where we find ourselves is so challenging, but it's a moment that we can rise up to. And I think we should all work hard to meet this moment with confidence and with a deepened pursuit of life's mastery. So I love what you said, Jack. I think we should, this year, 2020, for us at Blue Courage, it started off absolutely fabulous. And then, of course, we hit the wall. But there's still plenty of this year left for us to make this the greatest year of our life, the greatest moment where we showed up and met the moment, and let this year launch perhaps what could be the greatest decade of our life. I think we should all move from learning to practice to mastery so that we can close the gap between what we are capable of being and who we actually are and how we show up in any given moment. So I would challenge all of us as we close this to let's just reflect and figure out how can we use our greatest gifts to be of the greatest service to the world today, because the world certainly needs the best of each and every one of us. So thank you.
Mastery is accessible to all of us. It's a process. If we have the courage to open our hearts and our minds to develop these skills and tools to thrive in the coronavirus age and not just survive it. Michael, David, thank you for joining us. And back to you, Becky. And thank you to the Blue Courage team for setting this up.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you to our Blue Courage Master Trainers for giving of your time and sharing your wisdom with us today. We appreciate you taking the time to be here with us. And I want to remind everyone that we will be posting this webinar on Facebook and on YouTube. And please share your questions, your thoughts, and share the link with everyone. Thank you again for being with us, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Nice to see some friendly faces on here.
Yes.
Thank you.